A compliance state. Well, that's not what we started to do with ISO. And I think what's really happened is the big project and all the ideas have been kind of lost.
It's a shame.
We're trying to get to an end date and get to a compliant state rather than what our aspirations were in the beginning.
If you're here, listening, you're already different. You're the kind of person who sees the infrastructure, not just the hype. You're the kind who's playing chess while everyone else is stuck on checkers. Because deep down, this whole financial system is being rebuilt from the ground up, and the coins that actually matter are the ones built for that future. And here's the crazy part, that future is ISO 20022. It's not just a buzzword. It's the backbone. It's the quiet code standard that's about to unify how money, data, and assets move around the world. Every transaction, every message, every digital dollar. Now, here's where it gets fun, because I'm not here to sell you dreams. I'm here to break down what happens if you're holding the right mix of these ISO 20022 coins, the ones designed for the new financial rails. I'm talking about 1000 XRP, 2000 HBAR, 2500 XLM, 3000 XDC, and 500 QNT. That's the portfolio. That's the foundation. If you're holding that, whether you bought it cheap or you've been dollar cost averaging quietly while everyone else chases hype, you might be sitting on the ultimate long-term setup in all of crypto. Let's talk about why. XRP, that's the bridge. Always has been. The most battle-tested digital asset in the space. It's been through wars, lawsuits, bans, FUD, years of people calling it dead. And yet, it's still here. Still liquid. Still integrated. XRP's strength isn't in hype. It's an infrastructure. It's literally built for movement to make global transactions instant, cheap, and compliant. People don't realize this, but XRP's use case doesn't depend on the bull run. It depends on utility adoption. That's why holding 1000 XRP in 2025 isn't about, will it moon? It's about being early to the one asset that actually solves a $1 trillion problem. Now HBAR, man, HBAR is the sleeper. The underdog that everyone's ignoring because it doesn't scream for attention. But this thing is the backbone of enterprise-grade blockchain. Fast, carbon-negative, secure, and scalable like nothing else. Hedera isn't trying to go viral. It's literally running behind the scenes. Every time an NFT mints, a supply chain updates, or a dataset moves on a Hedera partner network, that's real-world validation. Holding 2000 HBAR right now isn't just speculation. It's owning a piece of the tech that major corporations are already using without even shouting about it. Then there's XLM Stellar, the people's bridge. It's like XRP's little brother, but focused more on inclusion. You've got 2500 XLM. That's positioning yourself for the side of digital finance that connects you and me, peer-to-peer, remittance, cross-border payments for real people. XLM has quietly built a global payment layer that works. It's not hype, it's not vaporware. It's being used. That's the kind of coin that doesn't blow up fast. But when the system flips, it moves hard. And then XDC, the workhorse. 3000 XDC might not sound like much, but this coin is built for trade finance. And here's the part most people miss. Trade finance is one of the largest, least digitized markets in the world. We're talking about trillions sitting in outdated paper systems. The second that world moves on-chain, XDC doesn't just go up, it explodes. Because its role isn't speculative. It's functional. It's needed. And finally, QNT. Only 500 tokens, but this one is the crown jewel. Quant isn't trying to replace banks or governments. It's connecting them all. It's the layer that ties everything together, the plug and play, for the entire digital asset ecosystem. When you own QNT, you're not betting on a specific chain. You're betting on interoperability. You're betting on the future of every network needing to talk to each other seamlessly. That's why QNT's supply is so tiny. That's why people call it the black card of crypto. Now, when you put those five together, XRP, HBAR, XLM, XDC, QNT, you're not just holding coins. You're holding infrastructure. You're holding the pipes through which the next global financial system flows. And here's what makes this powerful. This isn't a pump portfolio. It's a positioning portfolio. You're not praying for hype, you're aligning with inevitability. Because think about it, what happens when banks, fintechs, corporations, and governments all start demanding real-time, secure, standardized transactions? What happens when money has to move as fast as data? What happens when the old rails finally break? And these are the only assets ready to carry the load. That's when this portfolio stops being early and starts being essential. Most people will never understand this. They'll sell too soon. They'll mock the believers. They'll chase memes, then cry when the serious coins actually move. But the truth is, if you're holding these specific amounts, 1000 XRP, 2000 HBAR, 2500 XLM, 3000 XDC, 500 QNT, you're not gambling anymore. You're building a foundation that could change your life in 2026. Now, I'm not here to promise timelines. The market will do what it does. But we've seen this pattern before. The serious infrastructure coins always lag the hype. Then they melt faces when the world finally catches up. It happened with Ethereum in 2017. It happened with Chainlink in 2020. And it could happen again with ISO 20022 coins in 2025 to 2026. So if you're sitting there thinking your portfolio looks small, don't. That's the point. This isn't about owning millions of tokens. It's about owning enough of the right ones, early enough, to catch the wave before it becomes obvious. Because the truth, the world doesn't need another meme coin. It needs a new financial language. And that's exactly what you're holding. When you really look at it, this ISO 20022 portfolio isn't random, it's surgical. It's like a 5-piece machine, and each coin plays a role the others can't. Start with XRP, the anchor, the bridge, the heart of cross-border liquidity. XRP's story is wild, years of lawsuits, regulatory drama, endless FU, and yet, it never died. That's because it's not hype-based. It's infrastructure-based. XRP was designed for the problem no one else solved, global money movement at scale. And once regulation clears up, that's when the machine flips on. You're not holding 1000 XRP hoping it pumps. You're holding 1000 XRP because it works. It moves value instantly with near zero fees, and it's already integrated in systems that are live today. XRP doesn't need a bull run, it needs recognition. And when that recognition hits, when institutions, banks, and payment providers fully unlock its rails, those who were early won't just be lucky. They'll be right. Then there's HBAR, the silent operator. The one people forget about until it shocks the market. HBAR is the definition of quiet strength. It doesn't rely on hype cycles. It builds through adoption. You've got major companies testing it, enterprises using it for carbon tracking, digital identity, supply chain data, tokenization, all running on the Hedera network. Holding 2000 HBAR isn't about hoping for a pump. It's about owning a piece of the network that's already solving real problems behind closed doors. It's enterprise-grade, future-proof, and energy-efficient, the complete opposite of the chaos that defined earlier blockchains. It's what happens when the world decides blockchain needs to work, not just trend. Now look at XLM, the emotional one. The one that connects the dots between banks and people, between nations and the unbanked. If XRP is the corporate bridge, XLM is the people's bridge. It's about inclusion, connecting remittances, cross-border payments, and small economies that traditional finance ignored. If you're holding 2500 XLM, you're literally holding digital empowerment. It's that simple. Stellar's focus has always been utility for the average person, not speculation. So when the system flips and these networks become the global rails of money, XLM's role will be crucial. It's the on-ramp, the translator between big finance and everyday life. Then you've got XDC, the dark horse, the one most people skip because it doesn't have a cult following or loud marketing. But that's exactly why it's powerful. XDC's focus is trade finance, something most retail investors don't even think about. But trade finance is one of the largest markets on the planet. Trillions move every year, yet the systems are ancient, slow, paper-heavy, and broken. Now imagine that entire world moving on-chain. Smart contracts automating global trade settlements, instant invoice financing, real-time data for customs and logistics. That's XDC's playground. Holding 3000 XDC isn't about gambling. It's about positioning for when trillion-dollar inefficiencies finally collapse into digital efficiency. And finally, there's QNT, the brain of the operation. The glue, the connector. You could have the best networks in the world, but if they can't talk to each other, it's chaos. Quant solves that. QNT isn't a blockchain. It's an overlay, the layer that connects all blockchains, institutions, and APIs under one standard framework. Owning 500 QNT isn't just a flex, it's a strategy. QNT has one of the lowest supplies in crypto, a clear use case, and institutional level adoption. It's not trying to go viral. It's quietly integrating into the backbone of digital finance. When the world wakes up to interoperability, when they realize every chain needs a universal translator, Quant becomes the key. Now, when you combine these 5 XRP, HBAR, XLM, XDC, and QNT, you're not holding a portfolio, you're holding a system. You've got the bridge, XRP, the engine, HBAR, the access point, XLM, the infrastructure, XDC, the connector, QNT. Together, they cover every part of what's coming: value transfer, transaction processing, trade, and interoperability. That's why this mix feels different. Because it's not built for hype cycles, it's built for relevance. And here's where it gets interesting. If you hold those amounts, 1000 XRP, 2000 HBR, 2500 XLM, 3000 XDC, 500 QNT, you're sitting on what I call a quiet millionaire setup. Not because it'll make you rich overnight, but because you've positioned yourself before the global adoption curve. Think about 2026, when the world will finally realize these aren't crypto coins, they're financial tools. When every government and company starts building on these rails, when real settlement happens in real time, the prices won't make sense anymore. They'll reflect necessity, not speculation. That's why you don't measure this portfolio in weeks or months. You measure it in epochs. You hold through noise, through dips, through doubt, because the market always underprices fundamentals before it overcorrects. So yeah, this isn't a flashy portfolio. It's not made for dopamine traders. It's made for builders, believers, and long-term thinkers. Because if this system becomes what it's designed to be, your 1000 XRP won't just be tokens. They'll be digital lifelines. Your HBAR won't just be coins. They'll be energy-efficient nodes of global infrastructure. Your XLM won't just be numbers. They'll be access for millions. And your QNT and XDC? They'll be the keys to a world that runs on digital trust. The truth is, long-term wealth doesn't come from hype. It comes from conviction. And if you're holding these 5, you already have what most people don't: a map to the next era of money. Let's be honest, holding these coins isn't easy. It's not flashy. It's not fast. It's not the kind of thing that gets you Twitter likes or YouTube clicks. It's the slow grind, the kind that tests your patience, your nerves, and your belief in your own research. And that's exactly why so few people make it to the other side. You've probably noticed it already. The emotional cycle of crypto is brutal. 1 week, everyone's a genius. The next week, everyone's panicking. Red candles everywhere. Influencers disappear. And suddenly, the same people who swore they were diamond hands start posting. Maybe this wasn't the one. But here's the truth. Wealth in crypto doesn't go to the loudest. It goes to the quietest. It goes to the people who hold when it's uncomfortable, when it's boring, when it's lonely, when it feels like no one else gets it. If you're holding 1000 XRP, 2000 HBAR, 2500 XLM, 3000 XDC, and 500 QNT, you're playing one of the hardest emotional games in this market. You're betting on utility, and utility takes time. Let's talk about that. When you're holding meme coins, the emotional rhythm is short-term. It's dopamine-based. You buy, it pumps, you sell, you move on. But when you're holding infrastructure coins, the ones meant to rebuild financial plumbing, it's different. You're not chasing hype. You're waiting for adoption. And adoption doesn't follow charts. It follows timelines. And those timelines, they move slow, then all at once. Think about it. Every major innovation in history has followed that pattern. The internet was boring for years before it changed the world. Smartphones were niche before they became necessity. Bitcoin was mocked before it became a global asset. That's where ISO coins are right now, the boring phase before the breakout. That's why conviction matters more than hype. Every time you open your portfolio and see red, you have a choice, panic or perspective. Most people panic. But perspective means zooming out and realizing the technology doesn't care about the price. The adoption curve doesn't pause for traders. HBAR keeps processing. XRP keeps settling. XLM keeps connecting. XDC keeps tokenizing. QNT keeps integrating. You can't stop progress, you can only position for it. And that's why this is emotional warfare. Because you're holding something 99% of people can't emotionally handle. You're holding something that won't reward impatience, but will overpay those who stay grounded. Picture this. It's late 2025, maybe early 2026. The news finally catches up. Suddenly, ISO coins are all over mainstream headlines. Partnerships, adoption, integration everywhere. Prices are exploding, Twitter's melting down, and everyone's scrambling to buy what you've been quietly stacking for years. And that's when it hits you, wealth wasn't built in that moment. It was built long before, in the silence. In the moments when you doubted yourself but didn't sell. When you watched the red candles bleed and told yourself, nah, I know what I hold. That's what separates the future rich from the regretful. See, everyone wants to get rich, but no one wants to wait rich. No one wants to sit through the uncertainty, the months of boredom, the online mockery, the sideways charts. But that's exactly where conviction compounds. Because let's be honest, 99% of this market is noise. Narratives shift weekly. Influencers chase engagement. Projects come and go. But these 5 coins, they're still here, still building, still integrating, still aligning with the next chapter of money. So yeah, it's emotional. There will be days you'll question it all. There will be nights you'll think, what if I'm wrong? And that's okay. That's normal. Because belief isn't about being blind, it's about having clarity through doubt. You hold these coins because you see what's coming before everyone else. You hold them because you understand that real wealth doesn't move in hype cycles, it moves in infrastructure cycles. And the infrastructure cycle we're entering now? It's ISO 20022. The moment global value transfer becomes real-time, standardized, and interconnected, these coins won't just rise, they'll become essential. That's the turning point. That's when you realize holding through chaos wasn't stubbornness. It was strategy. So the next time your portfolio dips, remember this. The price is temporary, but the foundation you're holding is permanent. BAR's speed doesn't vanish. XRP's liquidity bridge doesn't vanish. XLM's accessibility doesn't vanish. QNT's interoperability doesn't vanish. XDC's trade rail doesn't vanish. They're not dreams, they're rails. You're holding digital infrastructure, not lottery tickets. And the moment that clicks, the fear fades. You stop refreshing charts. You stop comparing to hype coins. You stop doubting every red candle. Because now, you understand that volatility isn't the enemy. It's the filter. It's what separates believers from tourists. So if you're here and you're still holding, still stacking, still believing, congratulations. You're already doing what 99% of this market can't. You're staying consistent in a space that rewards chaos. You're building in silence for a world that doesn't yet understand how big this gets. And when 2026 comes and this portfolio finally wakes up, when that boring 1000 XRP, 2000 HBAR, 2500 XLM, 3000 XDC, and 500 QNT start printing green candles like never before, it won't feel like luck. It'll feel like vindication. Because this isn't about hype. It's about holding through hell to reach freedom. Let's fast forward. Imagine it's late 2026. The world looks different. Banks aren't talking about crypto anymore, they're using it. Cross-border payments aren't taking 3 business days. They're happening in 3 seconds. Tokenized assets are normal. CBDCs are quietly operating in the background. Nobody calls it crypto anymore. It's just money. And sitting in your wallet untouched are the same bags you've been holding. 1000 XRP, 2000 HBAR, 2500 XLM, 3000 XDC, 500 QNT. The same portfolio that everyone ignored in 2023, doubted in 2024, and mocked in 2025. Suddenly, it's front-page news. Suddenly, those boring ISO coins are the backbone of global financial messaging. The rails are live, the pipes are open, and value is moving at the speed of thought. Let's break down what that actually means. If XRP is sitting at even $5 to $10, that's $5,000 to $10,000 from your stack. But that's the conservative case. When global liquidity is flowing through a network used by banks, exchanges, and governments, the ceiling doesn't look like $10 anymore. It looks like whatever the system demands it to be. HBAR at $3 to $5? That's another $6,000 to $10,000. And that's not far-fetched. Hedera's partnerships have already proven enterprise-grade demand, from payment networks to digital identity, carbon markets, and supply chain tokenization. You're not betting on hype, you're sitting on infrastructure that's already doing millions of transactions daily, and that's before mainstream adoption. XLM at $1 to $2? That's $2,500 to $5,000, and honestly, that's where XLM's mission shines. It's built for inclusion, for the billions unbanked, for real-world remittances, for the kind of use cases that can scale quietly until they're suddenly everywhere. Then there's XDC, the underdog. If that hits even $1, your 3,000 tokens become $3,000. But remember, XDC isn't chasing retail hype. It's building trade rails, tokenized bills of lading, smart contracts for logistics, global commerce rails. When that sector wakes up, it doesn't trickle, it floods. And finally, QNT, the quiet heavyweight. If that's sitting at $1,000 to $2,000, your 500 QNT are worth $500,000 to $1 million. Quant isn't competing with coins, it's building the connective tissue between them. It's the bridge between networks, the key to interoperability. Add that up, even conservatively, and you start seeing numbers that make you breathe differently. You start realizing that this isn't just a crypto portfolio. It's a digital infrastructure portfolio. And digital infrastructure is what the next generation of wealth will be built on. Here's the thing nobody talks about. The crypto market in 2026 isn't going to look like the one in 2021 or 2022. The meme phase will fade. The casino will still exist, sure, but the value layer, the ISO layer, will dominate. Projects that solve real problems will outlast the noise. And these 5 coins, they're the quiet architects of that layer. That's why this portfolio isn't about luck. It's about positioning, about patience, about timing the tide, not the wave. Because the waves are random, but the tide is inevitable. People keep asking, when moon? But the better question is, when maturity? Because that's when the real wealth transfers happen, when the system shifts, when the infrastructure upgrades, when what used to be called crypto becomes the default settlement layer for the world. That's when this portfolio goes from potential to power. But let's talk emotionally for a second, because if you've made it this far, you already know the hardest part isn't the wait. It's the noise. It's watching everything else pump while your portfolio bleeds. It's questioning yourself every few months. It's wondering if you're missing out. But the truth? You're not missing out, you're just early. That's what being early feels like. It feels uncomfortable, feels quiet, feels uncertain. But every person who ever built generational wealth went through that same phase. They weren't chasing hype, they were holding conviction. And that's what you're doing here. This portfolio, 1,000 XRP, 2,000 HBAR, 2,500 XLM, 3,000 XDC, and 500 QNT is a bet on the inevitable. It's a bet on standardization, on real-world use, on global interoperability. You're not gambling on dreams. You're holding the framework of tomorrow's value system. And by 2026, the world will finally start speaking that language. The beauty of it all? When that moment comes, you won't need to scream, "I told you so." The numbers will say it for you. But don't get it twisted. This isn't financial advice. It's emotional advice. Because no matter how good your portfolio looks, if you don't have the patience to hold, none of it matters. You can't rush global adoption. You can't rush utility. You can only prepare for when it finally clicks. And when it clicks, it'll move fast. Too fast for people to react. That's why we hold now. That's why we study now. That's why we endure the boredom and volatility now. Because when the switch flips, it'll be the biggest transfer of digital wealth this space has ever seen. So yeah, maybe it's quiet today. Maybe it feels slow, but by 2026, the patience, the research, the conviction, it'll all make sense. And you'll look back at this time and realize this was the setup. This was the moment before everything changed. Movie camera, YouTube, CTA. If you made it to the end of this video, you're not just another viewer, you're part of the 1% who actually get it. Now I want to hear from you. Backhand index pointing down, drop a comment right now. Which of these ISO coins are you holding the hardest? XRP, HBAR, XLM, XDC, or QNT? Tell me your conviction level from 1 to 10. Let's see who's really ready for what's coming in 2026. Because remember, you don't get rich when everyone's watching. You get rich when everyone's sleeping.